Please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
In other news today, the White House tightening travel and trade sanctions against Cuba. Michelle Caruso Cabrera has the details. Michelle?
Hey, Kelly, the U.S. government announcing today people subject to U.S. jurisdiction will be prohibited from dealing with nearly 200 entities in Cuba that are connected to the Cuban military. Much of the Cuban economy is controlled by the military, so it's pretty significant. As a result, there are 83 hotels Americans will no longer be able to stay at, including the newest and perhaps most expensive property, the Kempinski. Hotel's website says a room will run you at least $500 per night if you want to stay there in January. Although the rules go into effect tomorrow, if you have already booked your stay, you are permitted to keep your plans. Companies that have already struck deals are grandfathered in, so Marriott can continue to manage the 4 Points by Sheraton despite its connection to the military. Cruise lines and airlines also grandfathered in. They can continue their business. Companies cannot do business at the Port of Mariel, which is a special economic zone that Cuba has established to try to attract foreign investment. All of these policies are designed to try and drive money toward a very small private sector that does exist in Cuba, pushing people to stay perhaps in private homes that you rent on Airbnb instead of at government-owned hotels. Kelly.
All right, Michelle, thank you. Michelle Caruso Cabrera. It's been a year since Donald Trump was elected as president. We are getting an important new estimate of how much the Republican tax plan in Congress will cost. Ilan Moy has those details. Ilan?
Kelly, the House tax plan will now cost $1.7 trillion over a decade, according to the Congressional Budget Office. And that is a problem for House Republicans because the rules that they want to use to fast track this legislation cap that price tag at just $1.5 trillion. Now, I spoke to Representative Mark Walker, who heads the powerful Republican Study Committee, about this issue. He questioned the math and the objectivity of the CBO, and he said that growth will help solve the deficit problem.
This does create maybe some deficits early on. We believe that the long-term growth over the next decade, even looking at nonpartisan organizations, are saying we could be 4.5%. This will more than offset any kind of deficit leading into this issue.
Another headache for the House is this new 20% excise tax on imports that really hits multinationals. Business and conservative groups are against this, and lawmakers are trying to massage the bill text to address those concerns. Now, I'm told by 3 people briefed on this issue that the Senate will not include this provision in the tax bill that they plan to introduce tomorrow, but it's much harder for the Senate to make some of these numbers work than it is for the House. Not only do they have to deal with that $1.5 trillion cap, they also cannot add to the deficit after 10 years. So, Kelly, this is really an example of a case where the process is driving the policy. Back to you.
I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow and the days ahead when we start to get their version of this. Ilan, thank you. We'll be keen to see what does play out. Ilan Moy. Former McDonald's CEO Ed Rensi joins us now with his report card on the Trump presidency in the 1-year anniversary of his election. Mr. Rensi, thank you again for joining us. You want to start with Jobs?
Happy to be here.
How do you think he's doing?
Well, I think overall he's doing pretty well. He's only been functioning for 10 months. I think the first 5 months were a disaster in getting his staff in place. I think he's got 2 great generals working for him now, and Kelly and Mathis. I think internationally he's doing an outstanding job. Strategically, I think he's doing an outstanding job. Communications-wise, he's sometimes very inarticulate and blurts things out in his Twitters. I wish he'd calm down and be a little bit more quiet than he is. But he's learning the job, and the thing I love about him the most is he's not a politician. And the Republicans and Democrats alike better start paying attention to the strategy the man's putting forward, because he is a strategist. He's not going to play those silly political games.
So we see here on your report card, you give him a C, as you mentioned, on communication, an A in international relations, and an A in strategy. Now, the strategy seems to be the very thing a lot of his critics take issue with. What do you think he's doing that's so effective there?
Well, like any great CEO, he has got an overarching strategy that says make America great again. And he's not an apologist like Obama. He's telling the international community very clearly, don't mess with us. We want fair force of protecting our freedoms. So he's pretty good at all those kinds of strategic things. I wish that people would understand, the conversation about Virginia, New Jersey. The thing that everybody's missing in that
You're referring to the wins last night, where Democrats won the governorships.
You bet. They're overthinking that dramatically. in my opinion, because the blue-collar workers that were Democrats that supported Trump are all about jobs. They're all about their family security. That's the reason why this tax plan, as part of his strategy, has got to be dealt with. It's the legislative bodies that must do that. And, I hear this business about, well, they're worried about how they're going to pay for it. Well, they haven't worried about the deficit for the last 12 years. Why are they starting now? Let's get a good tax plan in place.
If they want to pass it without needing 60 senators, they have to worry about the, the $1.5 trillion number. But Ed, let me just ask you.
Yeah, listen, I understand that, but the thing we all have to understand is they need to start doing the right thing instead of worrying about getting reelected. Or you can't satisfy everybody. There's going to be pain in that tax bill for a lot of people, and there's going to be benefit for more people. It's going to create jobs. That's what we've got to focus on.
So last question for you before we go. Your grade for him on the economy and on jobs is?
B, who knows? Talk to me in a year.
All right, incomplete. Ed Rensi, thank you very much for joining us. Shares of Roku were sagging all day ahead of the company's first earnings report since going public just in September. But when the earnings came in, what a jump it has taken. It's up about 24% right now. Dan Rayburn's here. He's principal analyst at Frost & Sullivan. What do you think of the results?
They did a good job. There's a couple key things we have to look at for investors that have the stock. So short and long term. Short term is that 40% over the last 2 years, 40% of their revenue has come in Q4. Obviously, the holiday seasons.
Wow.
So we have to keep an eye on that in Q4. That's the first thing. Second thing is the competition in the market has gotten a lot more fierce. Obviously, Amazon, Apple, Google with Chromecast. But Roku's done a really good job of being sort of this independent, standalone box. But now we're not thinking of them as a hardware company anymore. They have to become a platform company. So long term, you really have to look at the ad sales. How much revenue are they getting from content that they're putting across their platform?
But if you're telling me they have to be a platform company, it sounds like you're saying they have to compete against Apple and Google and Amazon, and can they?
It's a good question. It's difficult for them in the sense that they don't own an ecosystem. So what does Amazon own? A commerce company. They own hardware. They own browsers. Same with Google. Same with Apple. Roku doesn't own an ecosystem. So Roku really has to make money two things. One, internationally, which they've recently expanded, Latin America and other areas. So we have to watch that for growth. But second is they're now going to start offering an actual movie channel of their own, which kind of competes with some of the content owners that are distributing content across their box. So they're going to be an interesting one to watch over the next 2 to 3 quarters.
I guess my question is, ultimately, what does this functionality get incorporated into down the road?
Great
In other words,
question.
what are the virtues of being this independent box, third party, where you're essentially trying to knit together a quasi-bundle, I guess?
Yeah, so what's the value of Roku? So why is Roku in the market today when there's so many content choices and platforms? The thing people keep wondering is, when is the smart TV actually going to take over?
That's the question.
And people start using the smart TV and the functionality of the smart TV instead of standalone boxes. It's interesting.
Shouldn't Roku make that? I mean, the one thing they do offer is they are a FANG bundle. All the FANG is competing against itself, and here comes Roku as an outsider who's able to maybe put that all together.
Well, they've started to. So Roku has deals with 7 TV manufacturers where they are the platform on that TV manufacturer. Hisense and some of the others, TCL. The problem is they're not on Sony. They're not on Panasonic. They're not on Vizio. Some of those have decided to go with Google. So Roku's ultimate goal is to be the platform for TV on any TV set.
All right. That is a high bar.
Yes.
The operating system.
They want to be the OS.
Like to call it.
Yes. High bar, but again, a strong after earnings reaction. And Dan, thanks for giving us a lot of stuff to think about.
Thank you.
Dan Rayburn.